Well, Steve, give us a little bit of a background of your experience with the Way of Discipleship.
Sure. About 5 years ago, I had approached a guy about mentoring me, and we started going through that process. We did that for a couple of years, and then as the Way of Discipleship was being rolled out, he had asked me if I wanted to follow him as he followed Jesus, and we started going through the 11 practices of that. So we've been doing that for between 3 and 4 years. It's been very transformative in my life. And then about 2 years ago, I started discipling somebody. And then just this past summer, I started discipling the second person.
Mm-hmm. And now, from what I understand, there's another generation that's been added.
Yeah, that's correct. The first person that I started discipling, he is now discipling somebody as well.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
4 generations.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How would you say that the Way of Discipleship has been essential to your life?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in a very loving Christian home, and it was wonderful. But I would say that for me, a lot of my biblical teaching came from the church. And the gentleman who's discipling me, this is really the first time that I've had a spiritual father, an earthly spiritual father, if that makes any sense. So for somebody to pour themselves into me, to be there to answer questions, to be there to help me learn how to commune with God better, to help me understand how to interpret Scripture, to help me understand how to love somebody accurately, those are things that I just never had. And I've been able to then turn around and pass that forward to people. At work in the secular world, to be able to understand that during the struggles and during the times that I may struggle to find meaning in what I'm doing, I know that I have a purpose, and I know that I can help other people, help them to live their life better, to help them to understand and find meaning in what they're doing. It's helped me with my family. I have 2 young boys, and to be able to really recognize what's important to them. My wife and I were talking just the other day about my 7-year-old and his need to be heard. I wouldn't have caught that, 4 or 5 years ago, because I would have been too caught up in doing what I felt was right. And so for me to be able to take a step back, to love him accurately, to love him well, it's been transformative for me, for my marriage, for my relationship with Christ.
How has it been essential for you to disciple others? Yeah,
that's been great. At the beginning, I would say I struggled a little bit because it's a lot easier for me to have somebody pour their life into me. The amount of time and research that it takes to go into that, at first it was a little challenging to me, but it's incredibly rewarding. So for me to go through those practices and to look at it from a different perspective, to look at it from a different lens, I've grown immensely through that process.
So let's take a little bit of a step back and kind of look at it from a corporate level, corporate in the sense of our church.
Right.
How do you see that this Way of Discipleship, how is this essential for not just individuals, but for our entire church and the mission that we have in the world?
Yeah, Grace is very specific, and we do 2 things. We make disciples of Jesus Christ, and we launch them into the kingdom. It's very easy for somebody to come to church. This is a big church. It's easy for somebody to come by and kind of skate by. There's only so much that the teachings up front can do. And this one-on-one relationship, to be very specific and very time-bound with these 11 specific practices, it's critical. You can't skate by during this. I mean, there is intentional study, there's intentional time in prayer, there's intentional time in just going and struggling and processing through so many of these things. When I look back at the way Jesus did it, Jesus met with 12. He started with 12, and then he launched them off to spread his gospel and to spread the word, and that's what we're doing here. I mean, we're starting small. You start with that kind of that nano community. You meet with them, and then you launch them out. It lines up really, really well with what I saw Jesus do in the Gospels.
And one last question for you. When you envision the future of Grace, when you envision how this church will grow, how this church will continue to expand, how does Way of Discipleship play into that vision that you have for the future of our church?
The people will come and go in big church, as my kids like to call it. But as far as the growth, the spiritual growth, the depth of the relationships, it's absolutely paramount to how we're going to do things. I think back to how somebody's going to grow, and I look back at, I sat in church for 30 years, and I heard, but I didn't listen. And it took really somebody sitting down with me and building that trust with me and having that one-on-one relationship that just pushed it to the next level for me. And and when I look back as to where I was 5, 6, 7 years ago to where I am now, I almost don't recognize that person. And I look forward to seeing that next generation and to seeing people who have people that are discipling the next generation, people who are discipling those 10, 15 years younger than them, and to be able to help them process life. One of the gentlemen I'm discipling is a high school senior, and what he is struggling with in his high school age high school years is drastically different than what I struggled in. But to be able to sit with him and share my life story, to share how at the age of 37, there's still days that I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So to be able to help him understand that he doesn't have to have everything figured out right now. Another guy I'm discipling just went through a near family tragedy, and for him to call me and to be able to pray with him and to help him process, maybe why God allowed such and such to happen or what's going to happen next. It has shifted from being a burden to a privilege. And just to be able to share life with him and to walk through that is a blessing.